across many parts of England and Wales. All of this, though, shifting further southwards with clearer skies developing across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. And under these clearer skies, temperatures are going to take a bit of a drop, turning pretty chilly. Could be a touch of frost in some places. A milder night, though, across the south. Here it is going to be a cloudier start to tomorrow morning. There will be some outbreaks of rain. Could be the odd heavier burst, but most of this will clear through as we go through the morning. For central parts, things brightening up quite quickly, and also some decent bright sunny weather across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. But all the time there will be some showers around. The showers will be most likely in areas exposed to that northerly wind, so parts of Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and down the eastern side of England and Scotland as well. But even a few showers are possible elsewhere. We may see 1 or 2 showers developing in some inland places too, but for many it is going to be a much drier day than the last couple of days, and it's going to be a bit brighter. But like I said, we do have that cold air pushing its way in, so temperatures markedly lower and feeling pretty cold indeed, especially in those brisk northerly winds. As we go towards the end of the week, and a bit of a north-south split developing, wetter weather across northern parts, so Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain, perhaps some winteriness over the higher ground, staying drier and brighter across the southern 2/3 of the UK, however. Again, through the weekend, some rain is likely, mainly in the north. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in West Yorkshire on the M62. The motorway is blocked westbound from junction 30 to 29. A lorry overturned east of the M1 just off the Lofthouse interchange, where it got stuck on the central reservation. 2 lanes are also closed directly opposite to assist. And in Warwickshire on the M6 southbound, the inside lanes closed from the Cawley services to junction 3 at the Coventry exit for emergency repairs, causing long queues. Buses in for trains between Ely and Norwich due to a level crossing problem affecting East Midlands Railway and Greater Anglia services. There are severe delays on trams in Greater Manchester via Oldham Line due to an earlier incident at Oldham King Street. And finally, southeastern trains are not stopping at Longfield due to electrical supply problems. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's Wednesday the 9th of October. I'm Christopher Hope, covering for Nigel Farage. Now, you might be wondering where Nigel is this evening. Well, he's in there. He's voting in Parliament on the second reading of Labour's Renters' Rights Bill, which aims to protect the rights of those renting privately. We'll be hearing more from Nigel, hopefully later on, votes permitting, so don't go anywhere. Well, who said politics was predictable? Not me. In an election result which shocked Westminster, James Cleverly was spectacularly eliminated from the Tory leadership race after starting the day as the nailed-on favourite to make the final 2. This was my reaction earlier in Westminster.
Hell.
And later on, I'll be having what might be one of my last affordable pints with the co-founder of the Forum of British Pubs, amid fears that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is about to impose an alcohol tax that could put more beer pressure, get it, on pubs and drive them out of business. All of that to come, but first the news with Katie Bowen.
Christopher, thank you, and a very good evening to you. The time has just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. As you've been hearing this afternoon, Tory MPs have now selected the final two candidates in the Conservative leadership election, with Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick making it through to the members' vote. Kemi Badenoch received 42 votes, Robert Jenrick picked up 41, and James Cleverly received 37, meaning he has now been eliminated from the race. In a tweet, Cleverly has thanked his colleagues, party members and the public for the support he received during his campaign. GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, spoke to Robert Jenrick earlier on.
We have a very specific plan as to how we do that, whether it's improving the NHS, getting growth going again in our economy, or, yes, securing our borders. I don't believe in platitudes. I want us to have a serious plan now as to how we move forward and get this party back into gear for the good of our country.
Well, Jenrick's rival, Kemi Badenoch, had this to say a short while later.
It doesn't matter. People are hearing what I'm saying and they think my approach is right, that you start with principles first and then policy. We need to unite behind a real conservatism that means something to the country.
And you can watch the final two battle it out in a special live event here on GB News on the 17th of October. Elsewhere in politics, Sir Keir Starmer faced questions in the House of Commons this lunchtime as Prime Minister's questions returned. The Prime Minister faced questions from the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, about British fishermen in the Falklands amidst the controversial decision to hand the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius. Sir Keir said that the Falklands, which are personal to him, are British and they will remain British, all alongside Gibraltar. To the US, the biggest hurricane in a century is now hitting Florida, and a short while ago, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has urged residents to follow all safety advice as he held a press conference. If you're watching on television, these are live pictures we're bringing you from Fort Myers in the United States, where the hurricane is now impacting. President Biden expressed sympathy with those residents who were also recently battered by Hurricane Helene.
Many communities in Hurricane Milton's path do not have a moment to catch their breath between Helene and Milton. Two historic storms in 2 weeks. I want to thank everyone who has followed local guidance to evacuate ahead of landfall. I know it's really tough, leaving behind your home, your belongings, everything you own. But I urge everyone in Hurricane Milton's path to follow all safety instructions as we head to the next 24 hours.
And finally this evening, some sad news. Holocaust survivor Lily Ebert has died at the age of 100. Tributes have been paid to Ebert, who has been described as a trailblazing advocate for Holocaust education. King Charles has praised her extraordinary resilience and courage and said that she became an integral part of the fabric of our nation. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I am Katie Bowen. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Katie. So it's Kemi B versus Bobby J to become the next leader of the opposition, the Tory party. That's right, Kemi Badenoch versus Robert Jenrick. It's a battle between Leave and Remain. Only this time, it's whether we try to leave or remain in the European Convention on Human Rights. For me, the ejection of nailed-on favourite for the final two, James Cleverly, was the biggest surprise in British politics in Tory leadership land since Boris Johnson dropped out of the leadership race back in 2016. And I was there for that one too. This was my reaction in Parliament earlier as the news was announced by Bob Blackman from the 1922 committee.
Hell. I don't know what's happened. Oh my God. What's happened?
That, my friends, is a surprise journalist. Now, joining me now is the former editor of Conservative Home, Lord Goodman, Paul Goodman, and my panel, of course, of Dame Andrea Jenkins, a key supporter of Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister, and also Joe Phillips, forgive me, the former press secretary to Paddy Ashdown and the Lib Dems. Hi, guys. Well, thanks for coming on tonight. Paul, what on earth happened today?
My reaction was the same as yours when I saw those figures.
You swear like I did.
I don't know. I looked at the figures and I thought that's been tweeted wrong.
Yes.
Those figures must be wrong. And then they came up a second time, the third and the fourth time. So I don't know. I mean, you are famously dealing with what has euphemistically been described as the most sophisticated electorate in the world,
yes.
i.e., somewhat unreliable, or you might say in plain terms devious. I do not know whether James Cleverly lent votes to Robert Jenrick in order to get him into the final because he thought he could beat him and put himself down lower and out of the contest, or whether Robert Jenrick at some earlier stage had lent votes to James Cleverly. It's no good getting into all this because you will just never know.
Oh, it could be that something's been promised, because I remember as an MP in those final two stages, lots of jobs gets promised, etc. So it could even be that.
I think we can take it for granted that promises have been made by everyone to everyone else. But if you were your viewers and you were taking interest in this, you would think it was a complete mess and really quite good news for reform.
Well, let's go on to that in a minute, but let's think about today first of all. One Tory strategist told me there's no amount of campaigning, messaging and briefing that can account for the sheer duplicity of Tory MPs. I mean, it does seem that way.
There's an actually even bigger point here. If you look at what's happened, the vote is a third, a third, a third. If you're a Tory member, you do like, even if you're going to disagree with it, to have some clear idea of what Tory MPs think. And in fact, it's divided exactly as it did in 2001, when Ian Duncan Smith got a third, and it didn't really do him or the Conservatives a lot of good in the long run.
No. Now, what I've been told in terms of reporting for GB News is that there were 20 votes overnight. There were, of course, the votes for Tom Tugendhat, who dropped out, 20 votes. Where were they going to go? Well, the thinking had been that they would probably go half, maybe, to James Cleverly, taking up towards 50, maybe split between Jenrick and Badenoch, so they'd be in the mid-30s. So that comfort blanket, it apparently gave succour and support to supporters of James Cleverly's team to share out votes trying to get rid of either Jenrick or Badenoch. This is done without the knowledge or agreement of James Cleverly. I have on very good authority. And it looks like by trying to help get a better candidate for James Cleverly, they've killed their own candidate.
I mean, this is simply reinforcing what Andrew and I have already been saying, that you never know what Conservative MPs are going to do. I come back to this point about a third, a third, a third. The new leader, whoever it is, will now going that 2/3 of his or her colleagues didn't vote for them, which is not great. And furthermore, the members have got to try and make sense of the fact that the first-place candidate only beat the second-place candidate by one vote. The person who may stand to gain from all this, who Andrew is marginally acquainted with, is a certain Boris Johnson, who must be looking at this, thinking, I wonder if this could all blow up in 2 years, and what might happen?
Well, Andrew Jenkins, you were last night at the book launch of Boris Johnson. He didn't seem like somebody, because I was there too, like he was going to go anywhere very far away from Westminster.
Look, I mean, I'll always be loyal to Boris and Carrie. I mean, where I'm at with it is Boris was amazing last night, wasn't he? It was his true self, you know, he was very engaging. No, but he was very engaging.
By that you mean he's full of the boosters,
he was, and
Phillips would disagree with anything.
No, but and full of positivity. Now, where I'm at, though, is we've got two strong candidates who will definitely hold Starmer to account. I think we'll all agree on that. However, to me, we've also got... we don't have any candidate in the final two who was loyal to Boris. They've long gone now. So we've got two in the final who have stabbed Boris in the back. And so I'm at the stage now thinking, what the heck do I do next?
Well, I think we saw last night, only one candidate came to last night's event, and that was James Cleverly. I think we got a picture that was put up on Twitter.
But we don't want 5 more years of disastrous Labour, that's the issue.
Do you think, Joe Phillips, that the support of, or the, not support, but certainly Boris Johnson meeting James Cleverly last night may have damaged him amongst some Tory MPs because of the chaos of his leadership?
Well, who knows? I mean, you know, there are people like Andrea who think Boris Johnson's the best thing since sliced bread. There are others who think he was an absolute disaster. There are people like me completely outside
on the
the
screen now is that
Conservative
photograph.
Party who actually think he did such a lot of damage to this country's standing in the world, to democracy. to public life and everything else. And I think he's an utter disgrace. But what bothers me is that being leader of His Majesty's opposition is a really important job, and it's really important that people in opposition parties hold the government to account. And what I see from this, shoot-off, if you like, the high noon between who's going to go further right, they're going to end up arguing amongst themselves again, and the Tory party can't afford that.
And it could risk, for the Tories, letting in the Lib Dems even
well,
further.
They're so obsessed with reform, they've forgotten that we're breathing down their necks, and we're only 7 months away from local elections.
Have MPs failed here, Paul Goodman? Because MPs should really give an offer to the membership of a left or right candidate. Instead, they've got 2 right-wing candidates.
It's too early to say. And actually, if you look at who's supporting these candidates, they're often being supported by very surprising people. So take Nigel Huddleston, who's, the MP sort of well to the left of the party. He's supporting Kemi Badenoch. And there's a lot of that going on, and I think it's a bit simplistic to say that, you have 2 right-wing candidates and you've knocked out the left-wing candidate and all that. But my point is it's not a great platform on which to advance, even if it ultimately works, if you've only got the support of a third of your MPs.
But if you look at the voting records, I mean, besides generic, voting for against the Rwanda bill, if you look at the voting records in their entirety of Parliament, both of them are quite centrist, aren't they, with the way they voted, despite their rhetoric. I would argue that. Although Robert is the only one who's actually rebelled, and I think he's rebelled about 14 times. And prior, about 14 times. Kemi's never rebelled against the government.
Yeah, I'm a bit sceptical of this idea that they're both, so far off to the right you can't see them anymore.
Yeah, we've heard from both Jenrick and Badenoch in the news bulletins, but also James Cleverly, I think, gave out a quite decent statement tonight on Twitter.
We didn't do it. I didn't make it through, and that is massively disappointing for me. But one of the things that has really lifted my spirits is how many people have given me and the team so much support. So I want to say a huge thank you to you all. Could not have done any of this without you. Makes me proud to be a Conservative. Makes me proud that we can pull together as a team. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
A very generous statement from James Cleverly. He must be furious, Paul Goodman.
I think one of the reasons he did so well in the contest and, did so well at the conference is he's a very affable, unruffleable bloke. And while the other 2 were saying things at the conference they wouldn't really have wanted to have made into big stories, James Cleverly just sort of swaggered amiably on.
Stop being weird.
Stop being weird.
Let's be normal.
Delivered a good speech. He got a good reception, and hey, that's politics. Now he's out.
Joe Phillips, do you think Labour's Sir Keir Starmer, Ed Davey for Lib Dems will be pretty pleased with the results tonight?
They'll be absolutely delighted. I mean, Keir Starmer needs a bit of luck, having shot himself in the foot quite spectacularly for the last 100 days. And I think, neither of these 2 are a particular threat at the moment because it's such a divided party. And I think, the problem is Paul talks about the third. But, if you then get the members voting for somebody who 2/3 potentially of MPs don't support, you're just going to keep on having factions.
Andrew Jenkins, that's the risk, isn't it? You've got basically a leader now who looks like they'll be in tune with the membership,
exactly,
but not with the party.
As we found with Boris, wasn't it? Right?
And then that puts them under. They could be plotting, could start again.
I know.
And as things stand, I think it's a very low number of MPs can trigger a no-confidence vote. I think there are odds tonight, by the way. I saw odds somewhere on neither of these 2 making it to the next election.
Well, they probably won't. I mean, they are probably going to be the caretaker until it comes to the next election if this Parliament goes to full term.
Andrew?
But this is why I think that both Reform and Conservatives have got to bang their heads together at some point before the next election, because we'll have perpetual Labour governments.
Do a deal. I mean, Paul Goodman, that idea has been around for ages. I asked all 4 leaders, candidates at the conference last week this very question. All 4 said there are no deals with Reform or Nigel Farage.
Well, I suspect if Reform makes some progress in the local elections in May, this subject will come back. I think it is very difficult to do with Nigel Farage. If you look at the record, been through Michael Crick's great biography of Nigel Farage. If you look at the number of people he's just left behind, dumped, consigned to the margins of history, if I can just finish. I mean, you really can't, I think, do any deals with Nigel Farage because you can't rely on him. Whether in future, it's possible to sort of amalgamate with bits of reform when people get very tired of Labour. That's a different question.
He would say the reverse of that. He would say he was let down by the Tory party in 2019.
But also, look, I was having conversations with Nigel and Reform back in April and with Rishi, and about standing as joint ticket candidates, Conservative and Reform candidate in red wall seats, to try and lessen the damage of what Labour was going to do. Now, they wasn't against that. So, you know, I've seen a different side. They are pragmatic, and I think
I think the simple answer to that is reform didn't stand down for you, did they?
No, but no.
And cost you your seat?
Oh, no, but look, at the end of the day, we're in a democracy, and I believe if I get voted out, we'll get voted out. But I'm saying, though, that it was actually Rishi who wouldn't do the deal.
Oh, gosh.
I spent most of my
Douglas
life...
Carswell, Mark Reckless, all these characters who've done deals with Nigel Farage, where are they now? They've all disappeared to the sidelines, and Nigel marches effortlessly onwards.
He's reshaping in his world, he's reshaping politics, but wait and see. Jo Phillips, final
Well, I was just going to say, you know, I spent most of my time working for Paddy denying that there was any deal ever going to be done with Neil Kinnock and then Tony Blair and all of that, and you'll have read the Ashdown Diaries, Chris. But, you know, what actually happened when it came to a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, surprise, surprise, it was Nick Clegg and David Cameron. So you can never predict, really, as we know.
Anyway, this one will run and run, as I say. Jo Phillips,
absolutely.
Andrew Jenkins and Paul Goodman, thank you for now. Up next, Labour's radical rental reform bill is being voted on by MPs, including one Nigel Farage, as we speak. Will the bill bring security to millions of private rentals, as Labour hope, or will the administrative burden jack up rents even further and force some private landlords to sell up altogether? We'll be debating that after the break.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
We shot with the London Eye in the background, so it's quite an iconic shoot to do my cover of the Playboy magazine. So,
and you moved into the mansion for a while. Hugh called you the British Carmen Electra. You were one of his favourites, and it's renowned for its parties, of course. Over there, you must have had a few of those. Must have been wild times.
Fantastic parties, yeah. I mean, I met some incredible people. I will forever respect him and everyone at Playboy for the love and the support.
And you were on giant billboards, you were modelling for Nike, for Reebok, you're earning thousands of pounds a day.
Wow.
Absolutely like living the dream in terms of a model's lifestyle, and then things began to change.
Well, I've been living in Windsor for 4 years, and I can't get back into Windsor at the moment. The rents have gone ridiculous. I was paying $550 a month, and then the landlord just turned around one day and said I need to be paying $750. And I didn't really have a proper tenancy agreement, and I looked through it and I said, oh, can we get something in writing? And he was like, oh. So in the end, I wrote a tenancy agreement out from off the internet and I got it all signed. But then he went, if you're not going to pay the extra £250 a month, then you're going to have to move out. And I was like, well, you're going to have to give me 4 weeks. I can't just move out. I've got nowhere to go. And I think he thought he could just throw me out there and then... And he said, I've got someone that's going to move in that's going to pay £700-800 a month. So I went and got the tent, and I thought maybe this will be the way I can go for a few months or so, you know, and it was still summer a few months back when I became homeless. So, you know, I got the tent and I got all the cooking equipment and what have you from the money I got from some of the jobs I did, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go and be a free spirit for a bit, and I'm gonna have to just do my own thing. And you know what, it was the biggest mental relief to be able to have my own space. I mean, that was so liberating, absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, you might be wondering, where is Nigel Farage this evening? Well, he's currently doing his day job in Parliament. He's voting on the Renters Reform Bill. This bill, championed by the Labour government within their first 100 days, aims to reform the private rental market, banning no-fault evictions, limiting rent increases and improving housing standards. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is leading the charge, emphasising the urgent need for better protections for renters, especially vulnerable families. However, critics have argued that the bill goes too far and places a huge burden on landlords, which could therefore lead to increased rents for tenants. Joining me now in the studio is my panel of Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Tory MP and Minister, and Paddy Ashdown's former Press Secretary for the Lib Dems, Joe Phillips. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Andrea. Where are you on this rental reform? Do you worry about they might force landlords out of the market?
Absolutely. It just feels like the politics of envy again with Labour. I mean, I've got some constituents who have even contacted me recently, even though I'm not their MP, who, you know, they bought rental property, seeing this as their pension, and now they're going to sell up. So what's it going to do? It means there's less property available, obviously less supply, more demand. Prices are going to go up. So it's going to be difficult, especially for young people, I think, getting their own home.
But Joe Phillips, looking at the detail here, it'll mandate landlords to carry out essential repairs within a specific time frame. It stops landlords and letting agents encouraging tenants to bid above the listed rental price. It's basically equalising the market, isn't it,
yes,
for renters paying through the nose
so.
already?
And I think the problem is, you know, there are not all landlords are bad and not all tenants are bad. And Andrea talks about people who've bought a house to rent, presumably long-term rental. Yes. I live in a town where lots and lots of people who don't even come to the town bought them specifically for Airbnbs. Make a packet, and that has killed the rental market. Now, you know, I would be very happy to see those people sell up and lose money and make those houses available to people. But I think the problem is that if you live in temporary accommodation, if you have that constant threat of eviction, the no-fault eviction, hanging over your head, that has a terrifically bad impact on children's schooling, on your ability to get a job, on your ability to get credit, on your ability to register to vote, to register with a GP, to access health services, and to continue through the progress of day-to-day life. So I do think, you know, it's six of one and half a dozen of the other. We all know the story of Fergus Wilson, the dreadful, dreadful man who bought up acres and acres of property in Ashford in Kent and became a really big landlord. Now, part of the reason that was so readily available was because nobody could get a mortgage because it was built on floodplains and there's hundreds of houses. So, you know, there's a message there. Where do you build houses? What sort of houses do you build? What can you do about properties over shops? There's a really good scheme in Scotland whereby if you've got a second home or a home that you want to use as rental income, you basically lease it to the local authority. I mean, there's certainly in Edinburgh. So they manage it, they find a tenant, they do all of that.
Give you a regular income.
They give you a regular income.
And guaranteed terms to the...
Yes. So, you know, then you could say, actually, yes, I'm doing this, I'm a second homeowner, but I'm doing it for a social purpose. And that's real. But there are too many people, including a new Labour MP who got rumbled the other day for extremely bad... And if you're frightened of being kicked out, Chris, what are you going to say about the mould and the damp and the noise and the rubbish?
Many people have bought properties as an income, as you're alluding to there. Are they being punished for the bad eggs, as it were?
I seriously think they are. And as we've seen what Labour's done with the private schools as well, I think they are just punishing aspiration. And, I mean, regarding rental, I mean, I've also got a constituent who is a leasehold property that they've got a mortgage on. Now, they cannot allow pets in this leasehold. It's like 99-year lease. But we're trying to bring pets into the rental. I mean, I'm an animal lover. So it just shows you, you know, there's so many differences between rental and also people who've got mortgages as well. We've got to make it fair for everybody.
Yeah, the answer is to build more homes. I mean, not on floodplains, as you were saying there, Joe, but build them.
But the answer is to provide affordable social housing. You know, however that
but who's
comes
going to get those social housing? Because, I mean, look, Labour will not guarantee now it's going to go to our veterans. They will not rule out it's going to go to illegal migrants. So who's... I mean, when I was an MP, gosh, people was waiting 4 to 6 years to get onto...
Yes, I know,
get a property.
But that's
so what Labour are doing with this, people are going to be waiting longer because there's going to be less supply but more demand.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I do think there needs to be some protection for tenants, and I think you're absolutely right. There does need to be something that isn't a sort of a hammer to crack a nut. You know, it's fine having a goldfish or a small cat, but actually you don't want, you know, dogs.
Well, Joe and Andrea, we can now go to the normal presenter of this show, Nigel Farage, MP, doing his day job. Nigel Farage, welcome to your show, I should say. How did you vote?
Thank you, Chris.
I wonder how you voted.
Oh, I think this is a huge mistake. I mean, yes, of course it's true. There are rogue landlords and there are some tenants that get a rotten deal. There's no question about that. But here's the real issue with rents. With an exploding population, rents are going through the roof. They're up about 21% across England over the course of the last 4 years alone. And that's an average. In some areas, the problem is far more acute. And my real worry is about supply of housing. Now, under the last government, we saw the first shades of this. You know, pressure coming on those that have got Airbnbs because they're worried about second homes in Cornwall or whatever it may be. But now, you know, what is being proposed? I mean, think about this. Not just the idea that if somebody is there renting from you, frankly, you haven't got any means to remove them if you want to, that sort of fixed-term contracts would be ended. And then you've got Ed Miliband's EPC certificates, where you've got to bring your house up to a certain environmental standard by 2030, which certainly with older properties would cost a huge amount of money. And you've also, of course, had the tax changes the Conservatives brought in. For example, if you have a mortgage on a buy-to-let property, you can't write that cost off. So what's happening all over the country is people that own buy-to-let properties are saying, do you know what, it's not worth it, I'd rather sell them. That decreases the supply, and that means rents go even higher. So I think this is a very self-defeating piece of legislation, even though I understand the intentions behind it.
What do you say, Nigel, to critics who say that it's MPs who have second homes who are trying to oppose these bigger rights for renters and give them more certainty?
Well, you know, I've got a property that I rent out, but you know what? The way it's going, I may well just sell it. It'll be bought by a private person, and that opportunity for people to take it and use it for a short-term let for a holiday won't exist. Who's the winner in that?
The detail here of the no-fault evictions says that you can give 4 months' notice before you move back in if you have to. I mean, is it as draconian as you're suggesting?
Well, it is, because there is an appeals process against that, and that would kind of go to a court, a junior court, that would decide it. And look, I understand, I repeat the point, I understand the point that if you're a tenant that is effectively being asked to leave, it may be deeply inconvenient and difficult for you. But against that, rights of property ownership are one of the absolutely fundamental freedoms that we treasure in the free world. And I think what we're doing, both the last government and this, we're encroaching upon that. That, I think, is a mistake and wrong in principle. But the biggest problem, I repeat, is all that will happen with this legislation is there will be fewer properties on the market to rent at a time, and we saw the figures just yesterday, when the British population through net migration is exploding.
I've got to ask you, Nigel Farage, about the news of the day, which is the Tory leadership contest taking an unexpected turn. Who do you fear most, Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, the two candidates from the right of the party?
Well, firstly, can I apologise to the audience, because I generally get my big predictions right. Well, I got one wrong yesterday. Yeah. I thought Cleverly would... I got it wrong, hands up, you know. I thought Cleverly would sail through. Now, it's very interesting that last night Cleverly was on the terrace here in the Palace of Westminster, having a drink, strutting around, looking very confident, talking to everybody, went to Boris's book launch, and whilst he was almost on a victory parade, people like Robert Jenrick were on the phones talking to as many members of Parliament as they possibly could. That's one factor that I think played. The second factor that played was the Chagos Islands, because this story is far from over. And how funny, before the David Lammy Chagos Islands debate the other day, who left the chamber? Well, of course it was Cleverly, because he'd begun the negotiations in the first place. And that's another contributory factor. But the real reason, I think, that this has happened is supporters of Cleverly thinking, well, he's going to win anyway. Who do we want to knock out? Do we want to knock out Kemi? Do we want to knock out Jenrick? And all being too clever by half. When I look at the two that are left, I'm pretty confident that if it's Kemi Badenoch, she'll fall flat on her face pretty quickly. She's one of the most inconsistent politicians in Westminster. What she says and what she does are two very different things. As for Jenrick, he appears to be a convert to my kind of politics. He now gives speeches walking around the stage, but you need Robert the charisma to carry it off. If you want lessons in being Nigel Farage, I promise you I don't charge that much money for doing it. But I tell you what, if he sticks to this, if he wins with the membership, which he may well do, on this issue of the ECHR, he will find over half his parliamentary party viscerally opposed to it. And my guess is that Jenrick, if he wins, he might make a brave stab at it on policy, but they'll do for him within a year.
But he's coming to eat your lunch, Nigel Farage. Shouldn't Reform voters, and maybe the leader of Reform UK, be a bit worried about these two right-wing candidates?
Worried about people that lie at elections and then do the opposite? I don't think so, do you? Kemi Badenoch, of course, the great Eurosceptic who, when she had ministerial responsibility, dropped the legislation that would have taken out of our law 4,000 pieces of EU legislation. And Kemi Badenoch, yes, the one that now wants to control our borders and control immigration, who was the one that pushed the hardest for foreign students coming into Britain, bringing their mum with them as dependents. With inconsistency like that, there's very little to worry about.
Well, Nigel Farage, I'll leave you to go back to the Commons Terrace to see what's going on there and get some gossip. But thanks for joining us on your show, Farage, tonight. And thank you, Joe Phillips, and thank you also, Dave Andrew Jenkins. Up next, MI5 Director General Ken McCallum has warned that Iran and Russia are recruiting UK criminals to carry out their dirty work for them in this country. I'll have an expert with me next to discuss this alarming development.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather from the Met Office. As we go through into tomorrow, it is going to turn drier for many of us with some clearer or brighter skies, but with that it is also going to be a bit chillier because as the low pressure that's been dominating the weather across the UK recently drifts away towards the east, we will then get a northerly flow, and that northerly air is going to bring something a little bit colder. For the time being though, still some clouds, some outbreaks of rain across many parts of England and Wales. All of this though shifting further southwards with clearer skies developing across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. And under these clearer skies, temperatures are going to take a bit of a drop, turning pretty chilly. Could be a touch of frost in some places. A milder night though across the south. Here it is going to be a cloudier start to tomorrow morning. There will be some outbreaks of rain, could be the odd heavier burst, but most of this will clear through as we go through the morning. For central parts, things brightening up quite quickly, and also some decent bright sunny weather across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. But all the time there will be some showers around. The showers will be most likely in areas exposed to that northerly wind, so parts of Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and down the eastern side of England and Scotland as well. But even a few showers are possible elsewhere. We may see 1 or 2 showers developing in some inland places too, but for many it is going to be a much drier day than the last couple of days, and it's going to be a bit brighter. But like I said, we do have that cold air pushing its its way in, so temperatures markedly lower and feeling pretty cold indeed, especially in those brisk northerly winds. As we go towards the end of the week, and a bit of a north-south split developing, wetter weather across northern parts, so Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain, perhaps some winteriness over the higher ground, staying drier and brighter across the southern two-thirds of the UK, however. Again, through the weekend, some rain is likely, mainly in the north. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, yesterday, MI5 Director General Ken McCallum gave an alarming update on the current national security threats facing the country. Our top spy explained that the threat from terrorism, alongside ongoing efforts by Iran and Russia to harm the UK's security, now presented, in his words, the most complex and interconnected threat environment we've ever seen. Joining me now to discuss this is Elizabeth Broad, journalist and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative. And my panel are still here, of course. Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Tory MP and former government minister, and Paddy Ashdown's former press secretary from the Lib Dems, Joe Phillips. Elizabeth, great, thank you for coming in. How worried are you about our safety in this country now, given the escalating issues in other parts of the world?
Well, I am worried, but what matters even more is that we should all be worried, because what's happening is that Russia and other countries have concluded with justification that our military defence is quite good. Could be better, but it's quite good. It's not worth trying any silly games with our military, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to harm our countries. So what they're doing instead is using non-military means. We have seen them use Novichok in the UK. We have seen them sabotage various industrial sites in other countries, the Russians. We have seen China engage in hostage diplomacy. We have seen cyber aggression for many years. We have seen disinformation. And we try to counter each of these, but as soon as we get good at countering one of these, they do something else, which is what the Director General of MI5 was flagging up today.
Was he flagging up state-sponsored activity, Novichok being one, of course, in Salisbury, or is it more about just sleeper cells who then can start using their own initiative to try and attack people in this country?
So state-sponsored activity is what he was talking about, and it can appear in many guises, and in many ways it's impossible to know whether what we are seeing and what we are likely to see are people connected to a hostile state, or whether they're doing it on their own initiative. Because if you are the sponsoring hostile state, you're not going to flag up that connection to whoever is causing mischief.
I was surprised by the number of plots that appear to have been foiled by MI5. 43 late-stage plots since 2017, some involving firearms and explosives. I mean, is it a mistake to view the very serious issues of the invasion of Ukraine and looking at the Middle East and thinking it's all kind of over there, but it's really very much here as well?
It's very much here, and this is what I think is the really brutal awakening for this country. It feels safe. It is safe because it's an island, but with these means, you can target any country, regardless of whether it has a land border with any neighbours. And so I think this is something that people just have to realise. These threats are real, not just the threats, but the attacks, the forms of harm that our country is being exposed to. And the more awareness we have, the more likely we are to be able to counter it. But if we don't tell people, how are they going to know until the really bad crisis or form of harm strikes the country?
Yeah, Dame Andrea Jenkins, these terrorists only need to be right once, don't they? I mean, all this
Absolutely.
great work by MI5 keeping us safe gets forgotten if one gets through.
It is frightening, completely, as you said, really, and because they're not using the military means to come in really undetected, aren't they? And to be paying criminals to come over here and easily get through the EU routes, it's deeply concerning. But, I mean, one thing that I'm even more concerned about is that we've got Labour in power during this time because, look, let's not forget, only on Sunday this week, Labour was saying about ensuring that boys who are classed as terrorists if they have got misogynist comments at school, where this needs to be where the real focus is. And also, I think we also need to look at the importance of supporting Israel at the moment, because they are the ones who are obviously attacking Iran.
So, Joe Phillips, Andrea, right, are we misusing the word terrorism when we should be describing the people who Ken McCullum was describing rather than boys making ill-advised remarks?
Well, I think, you know, one of the biggest things that any security expert will tell you is you start sowing division and you start fracturing society, because that makes it very dangerous. And I was at a talk the other day with Jonathan Evans, former head of MI6, and he said, you know, we used to worry about tanks rolling up Whitehall, but we actually missed, and we are way behind. I think all countries are way behind the technological abilities of rogue actors, if you like, you know, hostile states, to infiltrate and cause chaos, whether it's through misinformation, disinformation, or hacking, you know, the railway or the health service or banks.
It's everywhere. I mean, Elizabeth Braw, I know for a fact that the international actors may want to get involved in the Tory leadership campaign. With the effects last time weren't there. They will do anything they can to cause chaos.
They will, and what is frightening is that when they interfere in elections, and they are likely to interfere in the US election as well, what matters is not whether they actually succeed in changing the outcome of the election. What matters is they give the impression to the public that our elections cannot be trusted. That is so harmful to a democracy if voters cannot be sure that the vote they've cast has actually ended up with a candidate they were casting their vote for, and if they cannot be sure that the information they receive about the issues and the candidates, that is correct information.
You're a former government minister, Andrew Jenkin. Why has Ken McCullum made this speech now? What's going on behind the scenes we don't know about?
That's very difficult to answer, isn't it, really? Because I'm not behind the scenes.
Well, you were. You're more than we were. You're in government.
No.
You're part of the deep state once.
No, absolutely. And in the Whip's office, you have to sign the Official Secrets Act, etc. So, as a Northern Ireland minister as well, I had to. Look, clearly something's brewing, isn't it? And, I mean, maybe that's why we've got a weak Labour government at the moment. If they're interfering, it's music to their ears, isn't it, to hostile actors? But in all seriousness, something's clearly brewing, and I hope that the government put more resources into MI5.
It could be an appeal for money, because Joe Phillips is the big spending round.
Yes,
we're going to hear in the spring. Right now, I think departments are bidding for what they can get.
And I think, you know, there's always going to be this tension between, you know, the Ministry of Defence that wants money for the traditional fighting force, if you like, and the other people who need it for the security services. But I think, you know, as Elizabeth has just said, this unsettling of people who go, I don't trust that, I don't trust that, I only trust that because that person said it. Even if that person is not real, that person's a bot. And all I would say is that we need, all of us, need to get a little bit more savvy about checking our facts. We can all have opinions, but we should check the facts.
And we take great care of that at GB News, of
certainly
course.
do.
Elizabeth Braw, thank you for joining us from the Atlantic Council, and of course Andrew Jenkins and Joe Phillips, thank you too. Now next, no point crying over a spilt pint. Well, you might soon be seeing increased taxes on alcohol because of the death of the affordable pint. Is the humble pint...
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
He's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again, because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
I love Tory, whenever it's Love Island's on. Seriously, honey, it's 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Tory. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
The favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing.
Have we?
Yeah, we have. From
I'm showing Tatiana to Katie Price, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
No, I don't.
Tatiana!
There's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lips.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, is the humble pint under threat? Well, brewers and landlords are warning that Chancellor Rachel Reeves' potential tax hike in the upcoming budget could signal the end of what's called the affordable pint. Already around 80 pubs a month are facing closure, according to figures compiled by advisory firm Altus. With alcohol duty under review and business rates relief for pubs at risk, the industry is already bracing itself and maybe grappling with rising costs and fears of widespread closures. Brewers argue that further taxes would worsen the sector's financial woes, while Labour's proposed worker rights reforms may create staffing crises in pubs that rely on flexible work contracts. Dave Mountford, the co-founder of the Forum of British Pubs, who was forced to shut his pub 2 weeks ago just for borrowing costs after running for 13 years, joins me now. Dave, welcome to Farage.
Good evening. How are you? You well?
Yeah, I'm sorry about your pub. Tell us the story of what happened to you.
Well, we've been in the pub. It's an independent, privately owned. We've been there 13 years. We were trading very effectively. It's been a very successful small community pub, turning over about £750,000 a year. And we were doing very well up until COVID. When COVID hit, we came out of COVID with a large bounce back loan. We didn't get anything like the support we needed from the government. We had to pay rents while we were shut. So we come out of the pub in debt. Then 2 years on, we had the situation with regards to the war in Ukraine, and our electricity bill went from £3,000 a month to £6,000 a month. It's basically for the last 2 years, we've made no money at all, really.
So you're being squeezed every which way, Dave, and of course more and more people are buying drinks from off-licence in the supermarkets, going home to drink them because they're frankly cheaper.
Well, we never lost that trade. We never lost the level of trade. That's the important thing to say. Our trade came back, and we were as busy as we were before COVID. But there is just basically no money in the business anymore. The taxation, we are taxed at just about every level you can imagine, and the increase in the gas and electricity crippled us. Although that's come down now. we're still tied into very high rates, or we were before we came out the pub. But the increase in the living wage in April put £32,000 on our wage bill this year. So that's just unsustainable. Without increasing our price in an independent pub well into the £5 to £6 a pint mark, which in Derbyshire is, it's kind of unheard of, really, or it would have been before COVID.
David, is it a lot of MPs, politicians watch this programme. Is it worth rethinking how we define the pub? It has a social value, doesn't it, which is different to other companies and businesses?
Yes, it is. I could go on about all the support that community pubs offer, but I've actually been campaigning for pubs for the last. I stopped 2 years ago, actually, but prior to that, I was doing it for 12 years. I've briefed Rachel Reeves twice while she was chair of the Bays Select Committee. I've also briefed Lucy Powell when she was the Shadow Business Minister, and amongst 60 other MPs over the 12 years that I was campaigning. And I've really couldn't think of anybody who showed a fraction of real, genuine interest in the pubs and the pub industry. I don't think anybody really understood it. They view it, I believe, as very much a sort of a black economy. The health issues that are there. We never really got reasons why, but what I can assure you is that I've yet to meet an MP that understands the benefits that pub offer.
Dave, I want to wish you cheers from GB News. I've got to call last orders in our conversation, but all the best to you, and hope it gets better for you shortly. Thank you for joining us tonight on Farage. Joining me now in the studio here is my panel of Dame Andrea Jenkins, former Tory MP and Minister in the last government, and Paddy Ashdown's former Press Secretary, Joe Phillips. Well, cheers to you both to our battle
With my lime and soda, yes.
It's not easy, is it, being a pub at the moment, or
It's
landlord?
very difficult, and it has been for years. And I think, it's all sorts of things. It is obviously, there's the legacy of COVID. There's also problems about transport in rural areas. There's the cost of running a property. There's the arrangements between the brewery, if you've got tied businesses, staff. And again, it comes back to have the staff got the means to get to the pub, the young people.
Andrew,
it's very difficult.
A quick word, why doesn't government get the value of pubs in our community?
Look, I mean, to me, I think Labour are the party poopers unless the party's for them.
You've been charged 14 years, you can't blame Labour for this.
Come on, we was OK with our... I mean, look, we gave lots of support during lockdown as well to the hospitality industry. But the fact is, look, they're being hammered if Labour go ahead with what they're proposing. And let's not look at the knock-on effect of the not being able to smoke in beer gardens, what they're proposing.
Well, I think they've rowed back from that, and there is a possibility that Labour
they might
will
ban
keep
smoking, but not vaping. They're under fire over last order. I think last orders are safe. Anyway, Jacob Rees-Mogg, welcome.
Without a drink.
You've got your show.
I haven't got a drink.
Do I sip of my beer?
No, thank you. I'll survive sober for my next hour.
I've got to ask you about today, Jacob Rees-Mogg. What on earth is going on in your party?
Well, it even silenced you momentarily, and you're the great expert on understanding what's going on in the Tory party. I will obviously be talking about this during my programme. What happened? How did James Cleverly fall out? Who is now the favourite between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch? I've got John Redwood with me to discuss that. And it's absolutely fascinating that one day's frontrunner is next day's out of the competition.
Were they lending votes, trying to kill off the two right-wingers?
Well, or was it just a great muddle, or is it all down to Alison Pearson in The Telegraph, saying that she'd join Reform if James Cleverly had become leader?
Well, it's been great to sit in with Nigel Farage today. Andrea Jenkins, Joe Phillips, thank you both for joining us. Be a great show. I'll be tuning in. That's all for me. Coming up next, State of the Nation with Jacob Rees-Mogg. First, though, the weather with Alex Burkle.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm here with your GB News weather from the Met Office. As we go through into tomorrow, it is going to turn drier for many of us with some clearer or brighter skies, but with that it is also going to be a bit chillier because as the low pressure that's been dominating the weather across the UK recently drifts away towards the east, we will then get a northerly flow, and that northerly air is going to bring something a little bit colder. For the time being though, still some clouds, some outbreaks of rain across many parts of England and Wales. All of this though though, shifting further southwards with clearer skies developing across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. And under these clearer skies, temperatures are going to take a bit of a drop, turning pretty chilly. Could be a touch of frost in some places. A milder night, though, across the south. Here it is going to be a cloudier start to tomorrow morning. There will be some outbreaks of rain. Could be the odd heavier burst, but most of this will clear through as we go through the morning. For central parts, things brightening up quite quickly, and also some decent bright sunny weather across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. But all the time there will be some showers around. The showers will be most likely in areas exposed to that northerly wind, so parts of Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and down the eastern side of England and Scotland as well. But even a few showers are possible elsewhere. We may see 1 or 2 showers developing in some inland places too, but for many it is going to be a much drier day than the last couple of days, and it's going to be a bit brighter. But like I said, we do have that cold air pushing its way in, so temperatures markedly lower and feeling pretty cold indeed, especially in those brisk northerly winds. As we go towards the end of the week, and a bit of a north-south split developing, wetter weather across northern parts, so Scotland seeing some outbreaks of rain, perhaps some winteriness over the higher ground, staying drier and brighter across the southern 2/3 of the UK, however. Again, through the weekend, some rain is likely, mainly in the north. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really...
So I